Hello and welcome to This Week in Plymouth. I'm your host, Donna Rodriguez, and today I am joined not only by Town Manager Derek Brindisi, but also our newly appointed Chair of the Select Board, Betty Cavacco.
Hi, thank
Hi.
you.
Thank you both for being here today.
Sure,
There's
thanks for
a
having
lot
us.
to talk about. Let's start. We mentioned a little bit last week, but let's jump right into some of the reorganization of the board and maybe some of the goals that you have and the board has for this year.
Oh, geez, there are
I know
so
that's
many.
a lot to talk about.
There are so many goals. So the board will be getting together the end of June,
Right.
and we'll be having a workshop to come up with our goals collectively. I know I've already put my goals forward. I believe Vice Chairman Quintal has put his. We're waiting for Charlie and John, and of course Harry. And we all have goals. A couple of them just aren't on paper yet. But it's very exciting to be able to work collectively with a great group of people that really have the best interest of heart for Plymouth. And I'm really excited to work with these gentlemen.
I'm looking forward to seeing all of you, develop your new relationship as a team too.
Yeah.
Let me ask you, with these goals, are these goals that you also take input from the community, or is this something specifically for how your board is going to operate together over this next year?
Well, for me as the chairman, I have goals as to how I want to see the board operate, and I think they're a little bit more, I don't want to say edgy, but a little bit more tech savvy. Some of the things that Derek and I have talked about is like the agenda. The agenda is very vanilla. And we've discussed actually putting out the agenda where once it's posted, there'll be hyperlinks under all the agenda items, so it will give an explanation as to what we're going to be discussing. And I think that's important for people to know because they really don't know the details of the agenda. I mean, we get packets and packets and pages of work that we have to read that back up what those agenda items have.
So people can really dive in if it's a topic of particular interest for a resident.
Right.
Okay,
like
wonderful.
For example, before I came here, I was talking to Selectman Helm, and he said he's gotten a lot of phone calls about the dog park and Allerton Street. And so some people are thinking that Allerton Street is going to be a dog park when that's really not what it's about. It's just a conversation of where we're going to move forward with specific issues regarding that parcel.
And to your point, an agenda is very specifically a bullet of the topics that will be discussed and the people associated, I assume.
Right, but I think the residents need more than just that. And, they shouldn't have to wait to ask questions. They can ask questions beforehand. And I just think it streamlined the process a lot better than it does now.
And just in case people don't know already how to view an agenda, if they go to plymouth-ma.gov, right on the main page, there's a schedule for the meeting. So when folks click on a meeting for a select board tomorrow at 6 p.m., when they click on that, it will bring them to a whole separate page.
Correct.
And there's an agenda tab there that
Yes.
folks can click on so they can review the agenda. Also, if they watch meetings through PACTV, if they go to pactv.org and click on the Watch Plymouth, it will bring them to a page, and we also share your agenda next to your meeting on the schedule for every week.
Right, and I think with, hopefully on that page, we'll have that hyperlink thing system in place fairly shortly, hopefully.
Yeah, and that speaks to transparency, right? So one thing that I heard during my interview process, speaking to all the different board members, was like, what else can we do, not only to be efficient, but more transparent? And to Selectman Cavacco's point, that right now the only thing you see is that one-page black and white agenda, right? And so when you have the hyperlink, you can click there and you can see all the backup materials. The board typically gets that backup materials on Friday anyways, but the community does not. So they have to wait until Tuesday to hear that discussion. So when the board receives the backup materials, so will the community. So this really speaks to the government trying to be more and more transparent.
Right.
And with a town of this size, there's so much that's happening on a regular basis. It can be hard to keep up. So if you're making everything easily accessible for folks, that can only be helpful, I would imagine, in the long run.
And one of the other things that we've discussed and just put into place is that from this point forward, when you see an item on the agenda, the select board will have had that backup for at least 7 days prior. And that way, I mean, there were some, difficulties in the past that you know, someone would say, well, I didn't get it till today, I don't have time to read it, or whatever. So we don't want that to ever happen again. So having a week out, I think, is important for the process and everybody to understand that we've had these for a week, we've had this information for a week, we've asked all our questions, and now we can move forward with this agenda item with every bit of information that we know of.
That's wonderful. Informed board members as well as an informed public who can then advise you as to what their wishes are as well.
Correct.
Now, there's so much that you talk about on a regular basis, and one of the large topics that's been going on, and that's been mentioned on this show as well, is everything going on with Holtec and the decommissioning of Pilgrim. Can you give us a little update what's happening? The biggest topic that's been discussed publicly is what's happening with the wastewater, and anything new there.
Sure, and to your point, that Senator Markey held a hearing, him and Congressman Keating, to talk about wastewater and Holtec, and that was well attended. I think a couple hundred people had met to hear that conversation. Since that meeting, I have had subsequent conversations, and board members have as well, with Senator Markey's office. And one of the issues that we're trying to understand a little more about is around the testing of the water that's in the spent fuel pool. You know, what are the pollutants in there? What level are those pollutants? We don't know that. We can't speak to that. And so one thing that I know the board is very mindful of is that when we're asked a question, we have answers, right? And so we don't have the answer for that yet. So we were able to engage Senator Markey's office around that very issue. And we've asked if Senator Markey's office could intervene and help us get into the room when Holtec and other state officials like DEP and DPH are starting to talk about testing the water in the spent fuel pool. We have very intelligent staff that understand water quality. They understand the currents that are in the harbor. And so we believe that, that our staff can provide some really good insight and advice into this process. The other piece that's happening around that is before they start to test the water, they want to identify certain sampling points in the harbor so that they have a baseline of what the water quality is in the harbor.
So they're taking the sample from the same location, probably the same time of day, so there's real consistency of the testing.
That's right, so that they can determine whether or not there's been a change in the water quality if wastewater were to be discharged. But again, we have a very strong harbor master's office that really understand that harbor probably better than anyone in the community. And so we've asked to get a seat at the table with Holtec and with state officials. And so, we appreciate all the work that Senator Markey's office has done to help us get there.
That's fantastic. And to bring the conversation to many, from that conference that was on May 6th at the town hall, one of the things they also talked about, I know you mentioned DEP, Department of Environmental Protection, and DPH, Department of Public Health, statewide, but having folks from NOAA, which is the Oceanography, National Oceanography, and that's a horrible thing to quote something when you don't have the definition. I apologize to our viewers for that. But NOAA.gov, which is an oceanographic studies, and they study the weather as well. So there are scientists at NOAA that hopefully would be involved. Also, our scientists at Woods Hole would be involved, folks locally in Plymouth. So everybody on the scientific side and conservation side would be able to be a part of the conversation as well.
National Oceanographic Atmospheric Administration.
Thank you for saving the host on this show. I appreciate that,
Derek. In my head.
NOAA is much easier.
Yeah, exactly.
It is, but it's so essential, it would seem, to have the folks locally and the scientists and the folks who are in that harbor every day be a part of truly evaluating the health of our waters.
Absolutely, right. Yeah, and we want to work with all of our federal partners and our state partners in order to get there. Again, this is happening to our community, right? And so we want to be able to, when those questions come before the board, we want to be able to have answers for them.
Excellent.
I will never believe that Plymouth shouldn't have a seat at the table. We should absolutely 100% be at the table. I worked there for 30 years, so I know all about the spent fuel pool and what's in there and the way you even had to dress to be up on the refuel floor. So I question greatly that any water coming out of there would be safe for our environment. So.
And you've absolutely been out there speaking publicly throughout this process as well, and I'm
Not
sure
one
we'll
drop.
continue.
You know, the Paul Quintal, Beth Cassoni, great advocates of our community. The fisheries, the commercial fishermen, I'm lucky enough to know the majority of them. So yeah, we have, off the line conversations. They're really, really concerned that this will destroy their livelihood. And as a town, we're really concerned that it will destroy all of our businesses, including our tourism.
So it's definitely a conversation that is essential that everybody be a part of, and that we have local scientists and oceanographers involved in every step of the process.
And it's the entire Northeast, honestly, all the way from here to the Cape and wherever else those waters may flow. So it's really important.
So this will be something that will be continuing, and we will continue to talk about it and give the community updates as they're available.
Right.
Thank you so much. There's a few other things going on that you would wanted to touch on as well. And I know one of the things, as we mentioned earlier, and everybody knows, Plymouth is a large town. There's a lot that's happening on a daily basis, and town government is constantly trying to communicate with residents information, but to have a nice flow of two-way communication too. I understand that the town is looking into additional options as to how they can communicate with you or get information. Do you want to talk a little bit about some of these ideas that you're looking at right now?
Sure. Again, this will be part of the goal-setting prioritization process, but going back to January, I remember a lot of weather events that were transpiring in this community, and talking to board members about just information flow. And so there's a lot of best practices that are out there that communities like Boston and Somerville and even Worcester just most recently announced their 311 customer service system. And there's various platforms and technology in order to accomplish this, but the genesis of the program is to allow residents to engage town government on a regular basis, in an efficient basis, where they can let us know their questions, their comments, their concerns. It's mostly driven around complaints, unfortunately. When someone says, listen, I've had a pothole in front of my house for the last 6 months, when is someone going to fix it? They can go to this 311 system, they can log that complaint, it then gets routed to the appropriate department. The resident can then go ahead and follow up because it gets a work order and can see where in the queue that complaint is going to be resolved. And then from a management standpoint, we can go in there, we can say, how come it's taking us 30 days to fill potholes, right? Is that a workforce issue? Is that a funding issue? And try to resolve these issues up front. So this is something that I know, talking to Selectman Cavacco, I would say it's one of her top priorities, and it's something we're looking, very intently at.
What would your goals be for this service?
Well, my goals would be that it has a birth and an end of life. And the end of life of this is that the resident gets what they need and their issue is resolved, and there is a tracking system. I mean, obviously, many residents reach out to me via social media or a phone call or a text, and I do address them. I'm always sending emails like all day long. Derek's probably tired of looking at them by now. But one of the things that I appreciate so much is that, I'll send it to Derek, I'll CC the department head of where it lives, and within a very short amount of time, there's a response back. But with the 311 system, they can track that themselves. And
it absolutely increases the efficiency.
Absolutely.
And you'll be able to educate residents who contact you too, how to quickly be able to connect themselves.
Exactly.
And I would imagine it would let you see some trends too, that you might not normally see, because I think from a resident's point of view, I might not always call the right department. I might not be sure where to start sometimes, or I might know one person in a department I've worked with before, so I'll call them back. But having it go into a database, I would imagine people are going to get more quickly to where they need to be. You're going to be able to gather more reporting, so you're going to see the trends and where there might be problem areas to be more efficient all the way around, I would imagine.
And one of the things that I look at, and I'm not sure if it's possible, but I'm hoping that our Dude Solutions or Facility Solutions has some kind of something that we can integrate this. So when it does do the work order, you know, it goes out to facilities management or highway or wherever, you know, in marine and environmental, wherever it goes. So it's like an automatic, and it's on their desk. They know it's an issue. They know, almost like where they have certain time periods. You know, I'd like to be able to have, I don't think anybody should wait more than 24 hours for a response. Even if it says it's received, we've put it on the schedule, and here's where it's at.
And people could put in notices 24 hours a day too, which would go along with the resident schedule, I'm sure.
Right. And you know, the other thing too is every year we go to annual town meeting and we ask town meeting members to support our operating budget. And we hear often every year, year in and year out, that our taxes are going up, our taxes are going up. And so it's our goal to try to mitigate the rising tax. And so by doing that is becoming more efficient. So we may not have to hire more bodies because the workload is increasing, but if we have a system like this that says you have 7 potholes to fill in this neighborhood, we can do them all at once. Where right now it's kind of scattered. It's not organized well. So this, I think,
but it's just because of the systems that we currently have.
Yeah, no, right, absolutely. And so it'll help with scheduling and efficiency purposes, but at the same time, unfortunately, we've grown to a place where the residents feel like the only place they can get resolution is reaching out to their board members. And that's unfortunate that they believe that, because we have, I talk about it every week, we have amazing staff, you know, over 500 staff, that from the DPW to fire, police, town hall staff, marine and environmental affairs, and the list goes on. And sometimes when folks don't get the resolution right away, they blame it on staff. And really, it's not always the staff, it's kind of like the system. And so in my mind, the system's broken, and this is a possible solution to fix that.
So what are the next steps?
Well, the first step would be to the board to endorse this through our goal-setting process.
Right.
And so once they identify that this is a priority, it gives us our marching orders to then go ahead and then pursue this. And so once we get to that, you know, we'll bring in a collective team. As you can imagine, this type of product is going to touch all these different departments. And so at that point, we'll look at the different systems that are out there. We'll look at best practices. What did Boston do? What did Cambridge do? What's Worcester now starting to do? And see what worked, what didn't work, and then try to identify which is the best system that we want to go ahead and implement. At the end of the day, it may cost us some funding, and so then we look at, so what sources of funding are out there? Can we get a grant? That's our first ask. Can we get a grant to fund this? If not, are there federal dollars that are out there, like ARPA, for example, that we could tap into? And then the last case scenario is always going to town meeting and seeking some type of appropriation. So those would be the steps. I honestly would love to have this system up and running in 12 months from now. I say 12 months. Shaman's looking at me. She's probably thinking more like 3 months. But it takes time. It definitely takes time.
And I would imagine some of these apps, they might have, you know, kind of a scaling, or they might have an architecture, but to be able to customize it to your town and your needs, there's going to have to be some advanced research and data collection and really determination of what you want this app to do for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've already, what we will talk about probably, I hope in like 30 to 45 days, is what our inspectional services department is doing currently. They've gone through a similar process to do online permitting. And so it's a similar thought process in that we're trying to create efficiencies in how we do business in town government, but more create a virtual interface, in this case for our contractors, so that they can go ahead and submit their drawings, submit their plans, and seek a permit, whether it's through plumbing, electrical, or even through building department. So we're already working on some of these efficiencies now. We just haven't talked about them because it takes so long to identify what the best product is.
And that's something you've talked about on a regular basis on the show, is, you know, one of your goals as town manager, and obviously in line with what the board is looking at as well, is improving efficiencies. So really evaluating where things stand across the town, and then, you know, how can we improve upon what we're currently doing. And as you said, with over 500 employees, that's a large organization that you're all managing. What is your process, and how do you see this moving forward? Is this something that would be built into every day or annual meetings? How do you see cracking this nut?
Well, As far as the 311 system?
Building overall, evaluating the current efficiencies, evaluating
Right.
current systems, and finding creative ways to improve upon them.
So I think I look at it as twofold. Could even be threefold, but first and foremost, our departments, they already know their weaknesses. If you ask somebody, front-facing staff, what are some of the improvements we can make, I guarantee you they'll give you a half a dozen ideas, right? So what we've decided to do is we had this bottom-up approach where staff have fed into their department heads have fed those ideas to me. That information is going to be moved to the board because the board is really kind of the interface to the community. So they're the ones that are getting the phone calls about what's going on in my neighborhood. So they're hearing from the community what they think we need to fix. So collectively, we'll merge those two thought processes, and then we'll come up with one common set of goals so that we can measure ourselves in 12 months. See, that's the other important piece. I want to be able to look back in 12 months from now and say, we said that we were going to do these 20 things, and we completed 18 of them. That's a really good batting average, right? So some of it's about accountability to ourselves, but most importantly, it's to try to provide a better product to the community.
And strategic planning.
Right.
At a town level.
So that's where we really, in my mind, what we're doing this year with the board on goal setting, it to me is the foundation to develop a long-term strategic plan. I really would love to be able to work with the board in the year from now to develop a 5-year strategic plan. We have 5, 10-year capital plans. We have a facilities maintenance plan. But what's our long-term vision? Where do we want to be in 5 years from now? More importantly, where do we want to be in 20 years from now? I've talked in the past of, just being in the military, they don't think about where they want to be next year. They think about where they want to be in 2050. And so when you start thinking along those lines, you recognize that, listen, we got a long way to go. And so but we got to start somewhere.
And it's chipping away step by step, and it's starting with where are you today? It's your baseline.
Right.
Then you can decide to go from there. So, Chair Cavacco, your first time on the show. We've got about 5 minutes left. I'd love to hear a little bit more about maybe, if there are announcements you'd like to make or things that you're looking for feedback from the public, or anything else that you in particular would like to chat about today.
Well, I'm always looking for feedback from the public. One of the things that I find really difficult and time-consuming is the amount of misinformation that goes out on all these social media outlets. So I think as we move forward, we're hiring a communications person to take over our BOS admin, Chris Badeau, who's gotten a promotion. So one of the big goals for us is to have someone that is good at communication, that can dedicate that time. And right now, when we talked about the agenda and these hyperlinks, it takes a full day for Chris to do all the backup work for an agenda. So that's printing and doing all the stuff that he does. So that's going to free up some time. I think it's really important that we have one place. I mean, we all have Facebook pages, and there are some people that don't like that we put information out there. So I think as we move forward, it'll be a town page. It may even be an official selectmen's page, because none of our selectmen pages right now are official town pages.
I mean, you bring up a good point. Where can people go that they know the information they're getting is valid?
Right.
It's reliable. It's accurate. So if it's something that is approved by the town, and places like meeting coverage through PACTV, people are seeing everything in action as it's happening. So there are identifiable ways that people can currently get and will continue to, especially coming directly from the town. You can ask questions, put out information, respond to things that are out there, and just start pointing everybody in the right direction.
And one of the things for me as chairman, I believe that every board member should be able to handle a meeting. So once I get my feet a little bit more wet, I'd actually like each board member to do a meeting. and from start to finish, just like I do and just like the past chairman has done, because I want them to be able to feel comfortable and know everything. One of the big things with me is if I know something, I want all my board members to know the same thing that I know at the same time, maybe within a few minutes of making a phone call. But as we discussed previously, you know, we see that, you know, we have this big TV in front of us and we can only see people that are actually waiting to speak. Well, one of the things that I want is that I want a laptop at our table, at our counter, and you know, whether it's one of the other board members, I want them to be able to see who's there, who's going to be, who has their hand up. If there's a question that people are asking, I want to be able to see that. So for me, communication has always been a big thing. And as all the board members know, I communicate every day usually, and with Derek as well.
Well, I'm looking forward to seeing how this all develops. And,
So
you
am
know,
I.
so we can all be as a resident as well. You know, I look forward to knowing that here's the place I can go to get all the information,
I mean,
or the couple of places I can go and know that I'm getting accurate information. Believe it or not, we are running out of time already.
Okay.
So I was wondering if there were any final comments either of you would like to make, or any final announcements you'd like to make for this week.
Well, one of the things that I want people to know, even though that we have different opinions on the boards, we are a team, and we are going to work as a team. So I think that's really important, because you see some things like, oh, this one doesn't like that one, that one. You know what? We are all colleagues, and we are all out for the best interest of the town. And I want people to really know that and understand that. We may have differences of opinions, but we are all for the same goal, and that's the betterment of the town.
And hopefully that's lively conversation, and it allows to hear different opinions and ideas, so that everyone is able to make informed decisions to the benefit of the residents in the community.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Excellent.
I think that's a great way to end.
Excellent. Well, thank you both for joining us today.
Thank you for having us.
Looking forward to next week's episode. As usual, there's a lot of information that we're able to share. Thank all of you for watching as well. And if you'd like to reach out to the town manager directly, feel free to email at any time until there's a new system in place. Brindisi, BRINDISI, at plymouth.ma.gov.
Yes.
Excellent. And thank you again for watching. We look forward to seeing you again next week on This Week in Plymouth.